America Rediscovers Empathy. Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, June the 10th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. I'm Ron, your host and the only true conservative in the United States today. I created this podcast to answer the question most asked by conservatives, namely, what can I do? My podcast is short, approximately 5 to 10 minutes long, because shorter podcasts are easier to download and listen to. I've been listening to conservative talk radio since 1989. I've grown up in a socialist household and learned the tricks of socialism. My podcast is made available through Spreaker and can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Google, and YouTube. Today, what can I do? Quote of the day and America Rediscovers Empathy from the American Institute for Economic Research. All that when I come back. Thank you. What can I do? Make the presumption for the status quo. Know your enemy. Don't spread the disease. Resist subversion. Don't give in to the pressure to prove a negative. Mind your own business. Listen and read carefully. Criticize. Trust yourself. Be realistic. Learn to love the concept and abstraction. And don't be a reactionary. Next up, the quote of the day. Thank you. The quote of the day, quote, "The man is distinguished from the youth by the fact that he takes the world as it is, instead of everywhere fancying it amiss and wanting to improve it, model it after his ideal. In him, the view that one must deal with him according to his interest, not according to his ideals, becomes confirmed." Up next, America Rediscovers Empathy. Thank you. America Rediscovers Empathy from the American Institute for Economic Research, and it's written by Jeffrey Tucker. From early in the lockdown days, it became clear that this crisis would not make us come together and be better people. It would not be like 9/11. Instead, it would shatter our lives and make us worse people. We would turn on each other, engage in dramatic deeds that would hurt and harm people we like and love, and push our political agendas ahead of basic humane values. Dogs eating dogs, suitable for a people muscled and bludgeoned as if we are animals. Massive state intervention unleashes all kinds of hell, and this is one kind. An example here has been the shocking lack of empathy that people have shown toward the plight of others over these months. I had people tell me the, quote, lockdowns have been just fine, unquote, for them because they are stay-at-home people, have a cool tech job, or whatever, and therefore all the anger about the lockdowns is completely overwrought. They try to pass this off as doing good for others, and even the government awarded them points for staying home. What about a bit of empathy for the waiters, actors, musicians, athletes, hotel workers, airline employees, and all the technicians associated with all affected industries who saw massive financial losses and job losses? Not a tear shed for the small business owner wrecked. No concern for the parents who have their children's schools closed. And who could possibly care about the millions locked out of their churches on Easter? Apparently, there's a whole class of people out there who are just thrilled to work in their PJs and expect the world to deliver unto them food, liquor, electricity, music, and high-speed internet, just so long as everyone else is out there hustling to make it all happen. They looked at the protests against the lockdown and said, quote, "Hey, they should stay at home and be a hero like me. What's wrong with these people?" unquote. Certainly most mainstream reporters seem to hold this view. The protesters back then were bad guys, while the compliant stay-at-homers were the good guys. I would suggest the opposite is closer to truth. The protesters were those who showed empathy for others and also moral courage in the face of media attacks. To sit at home in those days like some 18th century French court aristocrat and sneer at those who were out doing good, exercising their freedoms and rights to help others regain theirs, suggests a dark worldview, almost pathological. It shows a fundamentally antisocial outlook of selfishness and disregard for the millions and billions who have suffered so much from the course of shutdowns. You see the same lack of concern for others in the models that drove the closures in the first place. They treated human beings as nothing but data to manipulate and then sloganize to make us comply. A pretty important basis of civilization is the capacity of a people to tie their personal happiness to the awareness of the possibility of happiness of others too. Systematic injustice and oppression should trouble us and inspire us to do something about it. The mandatory closures and vicious division between essential and non-essential people amounted to that. This is why the George Floyd protests, not the riots, but the protests, were so hugely important to breaking out of this immoral indifference to the plight of others. It was the moment when Americans finally rediscovered their capacity for empathy, after 3 months in which it was beaten out of them. We looked at the cop's knee on the man's neck, and though the racial element here is very obvious, the oppression at the hands of rulers is universal experience. It could have been any one of us. Sometimes experiencing injustice ourselves is the most direct path to gaining an understanding of what others go through. It was my first experience of being arrested for nothing and thrown being behind bars that put my own passion for emancipation of everyone into high gear. After that, I wrote about the topic of liberty with a new fire. It was the single most influential thing to occur in my adult years. So too, for millions of people, the lockdowns have given them new awareness of the disproportionate power of politicians and the police state. It was not to be forgotten. It will likely change this country for decades. To be sure, for many people, these protests are just the fashionable thing to do, just another way to virtue signal. To this, I would say, it is in fact a virtue to care about somebody besides yourself, to feel pain in the presence of suffering, even if it is not against you, to give of your time and energy to making the world a less violent place in everyone's interest. For all the people who felt so virtuous about staying home and sneering at those who hated the lockdown, I would say that is not virtuous. It's scary and dangerous. Finally, being out on the streets caring about others while exercising our rights, that is indeed making us better people. We are also better people if we celebrate the business owners who make it through this hell, congratulate everyone who did not or could not stay home, while casting aspersions on any politician who continues to keep restrictions in place. Having empathy, suggests Adam Smith, is a foundational principle of life and the basis of being a good person. Quote, how selfish soever man may be supposed, there are evidently some principles in his nature which interest him in the fortune of others, and render their happiness necessary to him, though he derives nothing from it except the pleasure of seeing it. As we have no immediate experience of what other men feel, we can form no idea of the manner in which they are affected, but by conceiving what we ourselves should feel like in the situation. Unquote. With the reopening and with the street protests around the country, we are rediscovering what it means to have empathy for others and to express that with boldness. Would that we had done so 3 months ago. Perhaps we somehow had to go through this time to experience the kind of world in which we do not want to live, closed, cold, and cruel. And to remember what we do want for ourselves and country, to be good people who care for others and show it in the warm sunlight of freedom. Jeffrey A. Tucker is editorial director for the American Institute for Economic Research, and he's the author of many thousands of articles in the scholarly and popular press and 8 books in 5 languages. So that was the America Rediscovers Empathy from the American Institute for Economic Research, and back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He's the person that has the courage of his convictions and is confident in what he knows. He's the person that understands that cultural conservatism is more important than political conservatism. He's not selfish, but minds his own business. He acts like an adult. He's patriotic and uses common sense. He expresses what he knows and does so with certainty. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He is open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American, and he is better than the socialist. He's a better friend, father, brother, family member, and a better person, period. You have to know that. If you don't know with every fiber of your being that being a true conservative is best, then you're wasting your time. And that brings me to the end of another episode of The Drill. Remember, be honest, be smart, and be beautiful. And always ask yourself, what is real? How do I know? What do I do about it? I'm Ron, and that's The Drill.